update on how our summer went and some of these things we're going to be speaking about. But because of the way that the Presbyterian meeting went, it was actually their suggestion for us to hold our own meeting, which was a great idea. So this is sort of what we would normally do at the Presbyterian meeting. What a really great thing that this COVID pandemic has brought to us, some of the silver linings, is that we can do this meeting virtually. And so many of you probably wouldn't have been at the Presbyterian meeting, so would have missed out on this. So that is one of the many silver linings we have discovered throughout COVID, is what we can do virtually. So to give you a little update on how our summer went, if you followed along at all on Facebook, or we did a lot of updates online, we put a dedicated COVID page to kind of our journey through how we were processing what was happening and decisions that were being made. That's still up there. The last update, I believe, was in May. But it was just like everything else that everybody else has had to go through, it was really difficult. It was difficult to have to make decisions when things were very uncertain back in the spring. Our council waited, we met, we decided to wait to make a decision until 8 weeks prior to camp. We felt that in order to be able to make a really good decision moving forward, we would need the time to be able to put a new program into place, or to be able to put in all the different regulations and procedures that would need to happen to run summer camp. So we made a decision 8 weeks prior to camp to not hold any in-person gatherings this summer. It was a really difficult decision for our council to make, but at the end of the day, it was the only decision, because we really do believe that the safety of our campers and our staff is our #1 priority. And so to stay true to that, we had to go ahead and cancel those in-person camps, as well as many of our volunteers, especially at our day camps. We had many volunteers that would fall in the at-risk category. So we wanted to make sure to protect them as well. So it was a really difficult decision. Once we made the decision, we moved forward with a brand new plan, something we've never done before, which, you know, our churches were starting to do, and our churches can say the same thing. A lot of our workplaces and schools, you know, everybody started shifting to figure out what would it look like to do something virtually and online. For us, you can see in the logo up here, we have a kind of an unofficial tagline for Montlure the last few years has been unplug to connect. One of our values that we hold on to very strongly at Montlure is unplugging. When we go to camp, we do not allow cell phones. We, you know, don't listen to music other than a very specified time. It's completely detached. Even at our day camps, when the kids come to day camps, if they're not supposed to bring their phones, or if they do, we hold them till the end of the day. So we are unplugged, and we think it's really important for our kids to know how to detach from their phones and from their devices. And so now we were in this challenge of how do we stay committed to being unplugged, but yet we're asking people to plug in virtually to connect with us. And so that was one of our biggest challenges at the beginning, was to really look at that, evaluate that. And, you know, at the end of the day, we are really thankful for technology. It gave us a way to connect with our campers in a way we wouldn't have been able to. And we still maintained, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but we maintained our value of making sure our kids, our campers, were unplugged throughout our camp programming. The other thing we needed to look at was, and what most people think is, how do you do camp virtually? You think of camp and you think kids running around, and you think crazy games, and you think hugging, and, you know, all the excitement that comes with camp. And so it's kind of these virtual and camp, these words that don't really seem to go together. But we had this idea, and we really felt that we were being led to figure it out, and to figure out how to connect with our campers. That is the most important thing, is to connect with our campers. And especially at a time when, you know, in March and April and May, mostly when we were on an Arizona-wide, you know, kind of a shelter in place, our campers weren't connecting with their friends. They weren't able to get out. And now we were taking away our in-person gathering. We didn't want to lose the connection with our campers. And we knew that it was the most important thing, to be able to offer the opportunity to connect with those kids who could do that virtually. So I don't want to go into too many details, because if you know me at all, I have a tendency to talk a lot. So I will try to go through some of these things a little bit, but we did want to show you a little bit about what we did do this summer. We ended up doing a program. It was divided by age groups, and they had a full week program where they would log in at different times throughout the day to do both large group gatherings with the whole group. They also logged in to do cabin time, small groups. We had times for games, we did sign up activities where each day they could sign up for a different activity, which is something we do when we go to overnight camp. They have that flexibility and freedom to choose some options. The games, we did a dance party one night. We did campfires 3 evenings. We had an amazing experience. We had 3 chaplains assist us with one of our weeks of camp, which was a true blessing. Typically we have 1 chaplain up at overnight camp, but we were able to have all 3 of them involved in our virtual program. We also had some help with leading music for our campers so that they wouldn't miss out on the Montlure camp songs that we like to do. We also, what a wonderful opportunity we had was to incorporate former staff who have moved out of state or weren't able to be on staff this summer. And so there were times where we get to utilize some of our staff that kids have really connected with over the last few years. And if we were in person, those staff unfortunately wouldn't have been involved, but they were able to be involved in some of our group games and some of our other special events with our campers. So that was a really special part of our virtual program. The other part of the program was we sent every camper a box, and every box was personalized to the camper. You know, they had notes written by their counselors. They had stuff with their names on it. So every box was unique and personalized. And basically, I'm just going to show you really quick. They got a box with a t-shirt and water bottle. And underneath it all was all kinds of just supplies and craft materials and everything they might need. There's paints, crayons, cute little tea lights, battery powered for some of our activities we did. There's a s'mores pack. The last night we had s'mores together. And there's also in there was a personalized devotional with devotions that we created to go along with our curriculum so that they had the opportunity to do their personal devotions offline, away from the computer. They didn't need to print anything, read anything up front. It was printed so that we encouraged them to go outside or do it in a quiet area in their home. And then we also, this was kind of our heart and soul of our program, is we had a pack of cards in there, and they're all basically every day, started with Sunday evening. They had a day, a time, and an activity, and these were their offline activities. So as long as they followed along, and we always gave them instructions before they signed off with us, they would go through the different activities, and they were meant to unplug them and to get away from the computer, but to still engage in programming that all the other campers were doing around the same time as well. So then when we would get back together in our small groups, we could discuss it, we could talk about it, they could showcase some of it. We had a helpline, kind of a standing Zoom helpline. So if they needed help with some of the crafts, they could just ding in and we'd be there to give them a few little pointers. But we really wanted to make sure that they had both the connection with the staff and each other through technology, because that was our only option, but to still be able to unplug. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them, and go along throughout the day, kind of twining both the virtual and the unplugged activity options. So that is a glimpse of what our program looked like. There were some other special things. We did a senior night. You know, we played underground church. If you have ever been a camper at Montlure, you are probably familiar with that game. And, you know, we figured out how to do it virtually, and it was a highlight of our week. Our campers loved it. So we really tried to think outside of the box and make sure that our program still felt like Montlure, even though we weren't together in person. So some of the things we learned and some of the ways that we actually feel that we've been strengthened and to be able to move forward. We've been saying for the past few years, if you come to any of our meet and greets, or we do these at churches a lot, that over the last several years, especially since the wall of fire in 2011, Montlure has really reevaluated our mission and the heart and soul of our ministry. And it's been shifting, and what once was a place, a really special mountaintop experiential place in Greer, has moved beyond just a place. So we are going to talk about Greer and the specialness of that site and the particularness of Greer. But what has happened is that Montlure has evolved into more than just a place. And Montlure has evolved into just a strong knit community. And we've experienced that at our traveling day camps is a really good example of that. We go in every summer to many different churches across Arizona. Some of them in communities that are disadvantaged or have at-risk kids, and many of them who cannot attend overnight camp. So we've been bringing the Montlure camping program into those churches and into those communities, and have extreme success with our traveling day camp programs, and those have not been in Greer. Our overnight programming, other than this past summer, has been recently in Pine Top at Wilderness Ranch. And it is still Montlure experience when they go to Wilderness Ranch site. And the other interesting thing is every single one of our current Montlure campers have never been a camper at the site in Greer. So if that hasn't sunk in yet for all of you that are familiar with the fire and our property in Greer, the current generations of campers that come to Montlure have never camped at Greer. And every single one of them are extremely excited to go back to Montlure every single summer. And it doesn't matter whether that's at a day camp, whether that's at Wilderness Ranch, or in this case, this summer, it was virtual. And so I think that once again, we have just been not just proving that we are more than just a place, but we've been learning that ourselves more and more every single year about how strong our community is. And even though we desire to have a site that will allow us to do more and to move our mission further, we've really learned that Montlure is more than just a place, and it is a community. And many of you are part of that community from generations past. I know I've heard from several of you. I know there's a couple on that have been since getting the camp back up and going right after World War II. So it's been many generations of Montlure campers, and it's exciting to see how things continue to evolve when we're open to where God leads us. And that's the same as the summer. We didn't want to cancel camp. We wanted to be open to where God was moving Montlure and how to reach campers and to bring the love of Christ into their homes, behind their computer screens or their devices this summer. So it was a very unique experience. A few things we did that we are excited to figure out how to continue doing is, once our camp week was over this summer, we continued to do cabin group check-ins. So our staff, even though they left and needed to go their own separate ways, they continued to meet virtually over Zoom with their cabin groups. And that is a huge benefit for us. It's something that we want to continue doing, next year when we're back in person, is so that when kids go to summer camp for their week at camp, it's not just over at the end of that week until the next youth event or the next summer, but really for the next several weeks until the end of the summer, we're going to continue to check in with our campers, find out how they're processing what they experienced at camp, what they've learned, what they've been talking about, and how they're actually processing that in their home environment. And that's probably been one of the biggest silver linings in all of this, is seeing that opportunity. We have opportunities to do other programs virtually, which we'll talk about here in a few moments, but it just gave us some ideas of how we can reach our campers year round, especially the ones that don't live in the local area to one another. We had quite a few campers this past summer that were brand new to Montlure. And so we also realized that the virtual program was reaching campers that wouldn't have been able to come to an in-person camp. For instance, we had a couple with some physical and emotional challenges that it would not have been the right time to send them to an overnight camp, and probably not even to a day camp. But we were able to work with them and their parents and give them the schedule, and their parents were able to sit with them and be able to help them go through the program together. So they were able to experience Montlure in a really safe environment. We also had a camper that moved away, and she does not live in Arizona anymore, but she was able to do the virtual camp, and she wouldn't have been able to come to in-person camp. We had people who had never even heard of Montlure. We did get some national press attention on our program, and so they're Presbyterian, and they wanted their kids to have a Presbyterian camp experience, even virtually. And so we had some campers from out of state that way as well. So it was a really unique experience just to see other people come to a virtual experience that we never would have connected with. And when we got to know them, we saw our campers connect in the ways that we only had dreamt was going to happen. I mean, we didn't know. When we set out to do this, we didn't know how it was all going to actually work. We just kept moving in faith, one step at a time. And, you know, by the second day, when the campers were leading their own discussions over Zoom and talking over each other, and they'd never met before, they were brand new to each other, and they're making these friendships. When we see friendships happen at camp, that's one of our biggest blessings. And to know that we had a successful week is when we see especially new friendships born at camp, and then you see them continue throughout the week and afterwards. So that was, to be able to see that happen virtually. We had campers who were crying at the end of the week because they didn't want their camp week to be over. And although tears aren't necessarily always a good sign at camp, we kind of like when we see campers cry at the end of the week, because we know that it meant so much to them and they want to hold on to that experience. And so we did have an amazing, successful summer. You know, there was a little bit of skepticism as we started, but as soon as we were in things and invested, and the kids were participating at the beginning of the week, you know, we had sort of light participation, and maybe they were only coming to some of our required, quote unquote, required virtual meetings, but we didn't see them come to some of the optional ones. But by the end of the camp week, we were basically at 100% participation level, and they were coming to every single thing and running out of time. We try to stick true to our time schedule, and we were running out of time because they kept wanting it to go on. So it was amazing, successful summer, and we're thankful for the opportunity, but then also the opportunity to learn how we can implement some of these things moving forward. So we're really excited to still kind of learn how to do that. As far as next summer goes, as of right now, we are cautiously but optimistically planning to hold in-person camps. So if you are interested in the dates of overnight camp, they're already posted on our website. We are going to wait to hold off on registration a while longer, as we just, you know, the whole world is kind of watching day by day as things change. We are also following the CDC guidelines, as well as the American Camping Association guidelines, and there will be a lot of different protocols and procedures that we have to put into place for next summer. And those are things that we are certainly willing to do. We now have the time to do it. We understand how to do it. Our collaboration with the other, it's a network of Presbyterian camps and conferences in the US and Canada. We continue collaboration. So when all this happened, even currently, weekly, we meet together and collaborate. So all the camps are learning from each other and hoping to continue to move forward. So as it stands right now, we are hoping to hold in-person camp again next summer. Overnight camp dates are posted, and traveling day camps will be coming soon. We're also really hopeful that we will be bringing one of our traveling day camps up to the Chinle Reservation next summer. That was something that was supposed to happen this summer, but of course, along with everything else, we had to push that back. So we're hopeful that that will be something new for next summer as well. We continue to move forward. So we're really thankful for all the support. We had just an outpouring of support when we said we were going to do this virtual camp, even though people were a little eyebrows raised a little bit and not really sure. And then also our staff. I just want to just talk about our staff just for a minute. We ended up hiring, of course, a much smaller staff this summer, but we still felt it was really important to have a dedicated staff. And that was hands down one of the best decisions we made. We had, including myself, there was 7 of us that ran the virtual camp, and all the staff were required to self-quarantine prior to arriving. So they did that for 2 weeks in May, kind of right as Arizona was starting to open up. I basically told everybody they had to stay inside. And then we all went to Orangewood Presbyterian Church in Phoenix, and we sheltered in place together for the duration of both training and camp itself. So our staff still went through an extensive training together. We still, we really pride ourselves on having excellent camp counselors. So there was a lot to still go through in training. Of course, some things looked very different in training, including how to use green screens. So this is a green screen behind me. We learned how to use technology at staff training. So some things look dramatically different. We also built the camper boxes, delivered them. But overall, our staff is what pulled off an incredible summer. They were so flexible, so creative. We had to change things on the fly sometimes, and the synergy of the staff and the way they were able to read each other and make adjustments, and that flexibility it's again something that we love about our summer staff, but they were put to the test this summer. Some of them are brand new staff as well. So we had a couple of brand new staff members, and we're so excited this was their first summer because it's just going to make them better counselors starting next year. So I owe a great deal of thanks to our summer staff. And if you know any of them, please tell them thank you. I do want to talk a little bit about some exciting programs we have coming up this fall, but I am wanting to go ahead and pass it over to Richard and allow him to talk a little bit about Greer. Before we do that though, I just want to do a quick spotlight on, we have a couple other council members are here, so just real quick, Jo is here, Jo Lewis is here, she is on our, she was on our Montlure Council, and Teresa Asher is here, and she is our Montlure treasurer, and so they joined in just a moment late after introduction, so I just wanted to make sure that happened. But Richard, if you want to give me a break from my voice a little bit, and we would love to hear about updates on Greer. I know people are excited to hear, and some people saw the videos and pictures of this week's happenings.
Yes, right. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I'm going to do a facility update, Greer facility update. I wanted to point out a couple things Kelly's probably going to be talking about later, but she's working on a leadership and training coaching program, which is good for camp. It's good for counselors that take part in that as well. And the 5 practices toolkit that Kelly worked on with a group of people with the Office of Christian Formation in Louisville. That is gone live on presbyterianmission.org, and Kelly is a practitioner of that, of the practices. They're used at camp, and she's available for teaching opportunities with your group, things like session retreats. And I just want to highlight those 2 things. So Montlure is alive and well. We continue to have a great camping ministry, even when we can't safely meet in person, even when we don't have our physical camp available to us. So now on to the update at Greer, and with updates, we always maybe look back a little ways for perspective. Most people know, but Montlure is on public land. It's in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forests. It's not just surrounded by the forest, it's actually a part of that, which is great. You know, it's an area that's set aside for its natural beauty, and that's what we love about it. It was damaged in the Wallow Fire in 2011. While the land is owned by the federal government and managed by the Forest Service, the buildings on the land are owned by the presbyteries in Arizona. And unfortunately, three cabins were burned and a bathhouse. It was a fire that just raged through the forest. Trees are burning, being cut down. It was being fought, in the moment there. And fortunately, not everything burned down. So it created a hazardous condition, as well as after the fire had been put out and then the rains came, it was obvious that the land around camp had been damaged in the fire, and there was flooding, there were debris flows through the middle of camp. And we have a approved mitigation plan for that hazardous condition and the erosion that ensued. We work with the Forest Service to get that approval. We're also working with the Forest Service on a couple of other things that need to be done before we can get our special use permit reinstated, and these are long-standing requirements. One is to have an environmental assessment performed, and thanks to a generous gift, we're able to pay for that. The Forest Service has reviewed, they just finished up this week reviewing the environmental assessment plan. We wanted to have them look at that to understand what we're planning to do to make sure it meets with their requirements. In other words, we didn't want to do something and then find out it wasn't enough and have to mobilize again to get more work done on it. So we wanted to get that done right the first time. We're expecting a report from them next week. We continue to maintain the facility and make repairs. Again, looking back about a year ago in August, the wastewater lift station was repaired. It hadn't been working for a while, and having that repaired cleared the way for having work camps in that fall last year and this year as well. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the spring work camps had to be postponed, but we're already scheduling to have spring work camps if we're able to do that. So that's what's going on with work camps. We want to have as many as we can. Also, last year, about a year ago this month, the Forest Service agreed to allow minors to attend work camps with some restrictions. A parent has to be with them. And since then, all work camps have had youth in attendance. And I tell you, it's great to see them having fun at camp, enjoying camp, falling in love with that place called Montlure again. In July, we were able to have a camp. We didn't de-winterize in the spring because of not knowing how to do that really safely. But we did de-winterize in July, and it was a socially distanced work camp. There were two families and myself, and we kept separate during camp. We did work together with masks, which is not a real treat at 8,450 feet in elevation, but we did it. A lot was accomplished. In particular, the remaining bathhouse was repaired and is working with temporary power. The inlet water line had a bad break in it, and the whole house type of filter had also frozen solid and cracked open. And then on the outlet side, the 4-inch drain pipe had been uncovered by erosion, and a sort of a weak joint had opened up, and that got repaired the right way. And as well as on the inlet side, the filters replaced and the inlet line was repaired. We discovered last fall that why we don't have power at the bathhouse and at Porcupine, and due to the fire, the electrical lines, which goes from building to building to building, electrical lines were damaged, and there's a short somewhere. We feel we'll have to retrench and put in new electrical lines to the bathhouse, which will then go on to supply Porcupine. But we were able to provide temporary power, so we got the lights, the exhaust fans, and the water heater controller working. So we had hot water, the place was thoroughly cleaned, and it was used as a bathhouse. So this is a great boon for having work camps next year where we have larger groups to be able to have a real bathhouse there. Another thing that's very current, the Apache County had brought in these highway barriers. You see them when you're in highway construction zones. They're called Jersey barriers. Big, long things, weigh tons and tons. The Apache County has come back this month and started removing them. I don't have an update on where we are in that process, but they're removing the Jersey barriers if they've not already been removed. That allows us to move forward with moving the soil and rocks around to do the mitigation work when we're allowed to do that. So that's kind of it on the Montlure facility side. I wanted to update you on the fundraiser. We're started work on our annual effort on a fall appeal campaign. We want to raise $150,000 this fall. It sounds like a lot, but having that would give us some breathing room as we get into next year. You know, I want to say we're very deliberate with our funds. We don't budget or spend without very careful consideration. You know, we'll continue to have fall appeals. We may have a capital campaign soon, so having some extra in the bank will allow us to continue having this high quality camp that we're having yearly, and also be able to grow the program as we continue to work toward getting back to Greer. You know, a couple other things to point out. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding COVID-19. We don't know if we'll be able to have in-person camp next year. And if we do, we don't know what attendance will be or what fees will come in, camper fees. Year to year, we've had an increase in campership since Kelly's come on board. But this year we didn't have camp, so we don't know if that affected momentum, you know, if we're having built up a pent-up demand building up or what. We just don't know what's going to happen in the future, as we all sort of know and work through what COVID-19 means and is going to mean next year. If we can't have in-person camp, we don't know what the attendance and camp fees for virtual camp will be. That's also a big unknown. I feel like we can have an increase in campership over this year. The cost for virtual camp is less, but you know, we still had to have staff. We still have to have staff, and Kelly had figured, and I agree, it would take about 200 campers to have a break-even point on virtual camp, something like that. This year we had 44, and like I say, I'm sure we could increase that. I feel certain of that. So, you know, Montlure behaves like a business. We have some attributes of a business. We have a budget, and you know, we have salary and all these things, but we're not really a business. Montlure is a mission. We're a ministry. Think of a church that's completely membership driven. So without a facility even to be able to rent out cabins or rent out the facility, which we can't do because we don't have a special use permit. We're really not ready to do that yet, although we're looking into doing that in a more determined fashion. Really our only income is from giving, which we're very grateful for, and we've had a great uptick in giving in recent years, and this year as well. And then camper fees is our other income item. And then I just want to point out a couple of additional things on the expense side. We have insurance for the Greer facility property insurance and liability insurance. The place is just out there in the open, in the forest. Anything can happen. We have to insure that. We have salary considerations. We have a payroll system we pay for, a camp registration system we pay for. We have a donor management system, the utilities at Greer, and then ongoing repairs at Greer are kind of the main expenses besides camp, putting on camp program itself. And then I just want to finish out with what the giving opportunities are for Montlure. We have general giving, get general support that can be spent either on program or on ongoing expenses. We have a camper scholarship fund, which is a great thing because it increases our campership base. It helps campers whose families can't afford the full weight of camp, and it helps the program as well to have more kids and have them be able to afford to come to camp. So that's the Camper Scholarship Fund. And then we have the Friends of Montlure program. It's a membership support program. There's an annual minimum donation we ask for. The funds are restricted for use on maintenance and insuring of the Greer facility. So that's a very good thing to give to. Gifts can be given in memory of or in honor of somebody. And we also have a rebuilding fund. Now, we're not doing a capital campaign. We're doing it as a general support campaign we're running, but any gifts to the rebuilding fund we wouldn't spend those now. They're completely restricted for getting back into camp when we're allowed to do that. Things like major remodels of buildings, building new buildings, and making the camp safe and ready to be occupied again. So Kelly, that's what I had in my presentation. I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Richard, so much. I just want to echo a few things Richard mentioned. Well, I've been asked several times about how COVID-19 has impacted us financially. And because of a lot of the networking that I do weekly with other camps across the country and even Canada, you know, the network of camps and conference centers is actually estimated right now that about 1/3 of our Presbyterian camps and conference centers actually are not going to survive because of this pandemic. And the reason for that is that their budgets were built in a way that they solely rely on registrations for summer camp to be able to operate. And I think what's really interesting that Montlure has had to do in the past several years, because we have been trying to figure out how to both pay for the maintenance costs of Greer, the insuring of Greer, just holding on to a property, as well as renting out and paying somebody else to use another site. It's put a strain on our budget. And so the last few years, our council has put in a great deal of effort to start shifting some of where the money goes. And so by not holding summer camp this summer is actually what's making us get through the pandemic. I mean, we still have funds we need to raise. And again, as Richard said, we rely on the supports of our churches and our individuals to continue our year-round programming and other costs that we have that are separate from our summer programming. But it's actually because of the way that we have our budget separated that we're able to push through and get through this hard time. Whereas unfortunately, there's quite a few other camps that are in a much worse position just because of their reliance on that revenue in the summer that they did not receive because they had to shut down. So I just owe a great deal of gratitude again to our council for just working through that in the last few years before we knew that it was going to even come to play in this manner. And so I think it's a blessing to where we are at. And again, we need your, that's not to say we don't need your support, or if you know people who can help advocate for us, that's something that we really hope that there's word of mouth by coming to this meeting. It shows that you're at least interested in what we're doing as a mission and at our site. And so we hope that you tell other people, not just about our needs financially, but about how much we're doing and how much we continue to do. And we continue to step forward in faith, even though we don't always have all the, how's that going to happen in 6 months from now, because we don't have all of the funds available. So we thank you for coming and being an advocate for us. A couple of things though I did want to share. Richard mentioned 2 of the 3 things. So the first one is there's a link in your chat right now, and that is a link to the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And we were fortunate enough to work in collaboration with some other faith ministries across the US and PCUSA. There was only one other camp, so it was our camp, one other camp, and then it was Christian education directors and ministers and just different leaders within the denomination that came together to work on this project. It's been a couple of years in the making, and it was just presented at General Assembly this past summer, and it's something that we adopted as Montlure for part of our value system 2 summers ago. So it is just trying to really dive in and look at who we are as a people of faith and what makes us different and what does that look like and how do we practically work through some of that. And so we narrowed down, there's a lot you could say here, and we could talk about why some were included and some weren't, but we just narrowed it down to focus on 5 Sabbath practices that allows us to have intergenerational opportunities to cross Christian faith and how we not only talk about our faith, but how we practice it. So one of the examples I use with our campers is if you can put yourself back into when you were 15 years old and you were learning how to drive and you studied that driver's permit manual as best as you could, and you took that test, and maybe it took you a few times, but at some point you passed it, maybe you even got 100%, and you knew it. You knew it inside and out. You knew the facts. You knew the language. You knew how to speak it. But when you get behind the wheel, it's an entirely different situation. And so you have to have the knowledge, and you need to know the foundation of where the knowledge and the information comes from, right? Our scriptures and our readings and where our faith comes from and the tradition and the history of our rich faith. But until you're actually practicing it and until you're behind the wheel, that's when it really becomes part of you. So you can know all the knowledge, but until you're practicing it, that's when it becomes part of your DNA. And so this has been developed to be used across all ages and stages of ministries and PCUSA. If you go to the link later, there's a lot of information. But if you are involved in a church ministry, it is free. It's a service that the Office of Christian Formation has put out for all churches and ministries to be able to use, and to start being able to just, again, have this common thread and common language and common ways that we practice our faith together as a body. So we're really excited that we got to be part of that as camp. We worked on both the camp module, but we worked on the entire, there's quite a bit extensive just theology and background behind each practice as well. So we invite you to look at that. There's also a at home. We actually were kind of at the end stages of putting this all together when COVID-19 really started to become a thing. And so we actually went back and we made an at-home kit as well. So there's even an at-home toolkit you can utilize in your own homes with your own families, and how do these practices look at home. But so that's something really exciting we've been able to be just a piece of, a part of, and we'll continue to work through all that as a camp. And how do we practice these Sabbath practices? The practices, just real quick, are things that you are probably familiar with, but they are hospitality, prayer, retreat, service, and storytelling. And so how do we really practice those and find Sabbath rest by practicing those? So another thing that we are doing that we are going to be introducing actually in the next couple of days. So if you follow us on social media or online, you'll see it launched there. But we have 2 new programs that are just about to start. So we are, of course, a summer camp is the meat and heart of our program, but we also want to look for ways that we can support our churches, support our families, and beyond just summer camp. We feel like Montlure has been a gift that we've been given to nurture and to build and to mold where our families and our churches need us to be. So one of those programs, Richard mentioned it, is a leadership mentorship program. And so we're going to be launching that. It's going to be a six-month program for older high school youth or young adults to work with me one-on-one monthly, and we get to do this virtually. So it's an opportunity we have where we can actually do this, and we don't need a, if we live in separate areas, that's okay. I can meet with them virtually, and they'll be going through a series of learning about their own leadership styles, their own potential for growth, where they, their weaknesses, how they can work on those, and really just instill in them the gifts that God has given them to use in leadership. And our hope is that maybe some of it might end up being on staff someday, but it's not a precursor to that. It's not also a guarantee. If they go through the program, we don't hire everybody who applies. We really are particular about our needs each summer. So our hope is, though, that it will reach a little bit broader audience, and that some of our churches may want to invest in that. So that launches next month. And then another really exciting thing that we are going to launch for this year is Advent camper boxes. So we're very excited about this. This past summer, you saw a little preview of a box we sent home, but we are developing a box that's specific to Montlure, but specific to Advent. And so these are going to be, they're mini boxes. They're not quite as extensive. There's no online programming to accompany them like the summer, but there'll be boxes filled with devotions that will line up with the themes of Advent, but we'll also integrate our Sabbath practices. So the 2 of them will be together in our devotions. There'll be some table talk discussion questions that families can utilize together. And then there will be some small projects and activities to do that line up with the devotions. And then, of course, there'll be a little Christmas gift from us to those who purchase it. So those are actually going to launch early next week. And it's something that you can provide to your own children in your homes, or if you're part of a ministry group, you might be able to sponsor some kids in your youth or children's programs. Or if you're a grandparent, you can send one to your grandkids, and it will come from Montlure. It will feel like Montlure. We really craft and curate. Everything is designed and developed by us. It's not a pre-bought devotional set. It's something that's very unique to who we are as a community, but also, of course, to prepare us for Christmas through the Advent season of preparation and hope and anticipation. So at a time when things are still really uncertain in this world right now, and how COVID is impacting all of our lives and the uncertainties there, we hope that this box brings a little bit of just hope and peace and stillness of Christ's love in all of our lives. So that is also something that we're really excited that we're launching. And so those are just some of the things that we work on year round. Like I said, even though summer camp is the heart of our program, we really do look at Montlure as a vehicle to serve our presbyteries and churches and families. And this year, this is what that looks like. And we're really excited that we're going to be able to meet some needs when maybe others aren't able to step into those roles this year. So I think right now what we'd like to do, thank you so much. I know it's hard to just listen to a talking head. This is not at all what virtual camp looked like, by the way. The kids were not just sitting and talking to us for 54 minutes without moving. But this isn't camp, this is a meeting. So if anybody has any question, we'll turn it off spotlight video. We just encourage you, we'd love feedback. So whether it's feedback, comments, or a question that either myself, Richard, or another council member can answer, we would love to do that. And thank you from Kellywood.